This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. My name's John Cordy and I work for Behringer. So Behringer have had a couple of interesting weeks, I think, because first of all they came out with this announcement that they were going to be making the Behringer Centaur, which is about their most brazen clone. And then yesterday I think I saw that they'd done a Univibe, which looks, a lot like the original Shinai. And I think also they did this Fuzzbender thing. I don't think any of those pedals are actually available yet. And I saw that they put out a statement kind of around this vaporware criticism. But I thought it's worth kind of talking about what they've been up to, as well as what they say they're doing. So we're driven by our love for creating exceptional instruments and making them accessible to everyone, no matter their budget or background. I think the backdrop for this possibly should be, first of all, made with kind of like a point that cloning has been controversial, and I've certainly had opinions on, just copying other circuits and maybe the amount of work that involved. I've been told by people that are involved in the pedal industry that actually, that kind of thing is super commonplace, has been for the entire dawn of the pedal industry. And so maybe then casting judgment on Behringer for doing this would seem a little bit naive in some ways, right? If this is what happens across the whole industry. Like, who else makes a Klon clone? Like J-Rocket, I think, were the first to make it. JHS make one. Wampler make several. Who else is there? There's the Warm Audio Centavo. There's this Cherrytone. There's all kinds of Klon clones already. Like, it's probably a fairly saturated market, right? And one thing in the JHS Ross video that he'd made, maybe the response as well, he kind of mentioned that there was a royalty that went back to the Ross family, I think for using the logo and the name rather than using the circuits per se. And I don't think that that is a usual thing. I don't think in general that these companies, unless it's like an actual, you know, we've got together and collaborated on this thing, like the MXR stuff with Analog Man and Paul Cochran with the Timmy. I think in general, cloning probably doesn't see much benefit to the people that have had their circuit cloned. Let me know in the comments if that's totally wrong or not, but I think generally it's not a positive. I remember first seeing this and thinking, that's pretty brazen, when Warm Audio kind of copied the Zendrive and copied the artwork. Now I think it's the artwork and like logos and stuff like that which is actually a bit more protectable than the circuits inside, however backward that seems. But yeah, they kind of just fully went for it. And I contacted Hermida at the time and she was just like, do you want me to demo a Zendrive? Because I feel like maybe the actual Zendrive should be given a little bit of a spotlight, because a lot of people were demoing this Warm Audio stuff. They didn't get back to me, obviously. But anyway, I kind of had my own sort of feelings about that when it happened. Now, with Behringer, they're actually not new to this. I think the enclosure part is relatively new, though, right? So this is a tube overdrive, and this back along, I did a video like 2020, maybe like 2020. And at the time I had like an Ibanez TS9 that I'd won, and probably the Keeley workstation, which has their red dirt in it. And I kind of thought that this actually stood up really well from a tone point of view with all of those others. And I think I even preferred it to the Ibanez. This is kind of what made me start to take Behringer a little bit more seriously from a tone point of view, right? Because obviously, like, it is plastic and enclosure and all that sort of stuff, but actually what it sounds like is pretty robust and sounds like a tube screamer, as you'd hope. And I think that might be the case along here, which is probably got to be one of the cheapest stereo reverbs going. I'm going to demo this at another stage. These belong to a student who lives just like a house down there. I bought this one for his son, who I used to teach, and I think I've recommended that they get one as well. So they've got two of these in the house. So I think it's kind of like what they say, like instruments that are accessible to everyone no matter their budget or background. So like 20 quid for a tube screamer seems to me to be the sort of thing that as a kid would have been pretty useful potentially. So you know, these guys were doing like grade 4 on guitar, and I was giving them lessons, and they needed something that would go from clean to overdriven. They needed both. So I was like, well, I've demoed one of these before. They're actually pretty good. And so that was why I recommended the tube overdrive. Now, I think they've also got some pedals that have increased in value over the years. So I bought a slow gear. So Behringer made a clone of a Boss slow gear, which has been a pedal which has kind of ballooned in value. Alec, if you're watching this, we've talked about this before, but the actual Boss slow gear pedal, like, they go for crazy money because I think they were made for a short time or something like that. And then Behringer did a copy of one, and that is kind of like sort of sought out within the used gear space and is worth more used than they were when they first came out, which is kind of interesting. Behringer also own, or the company that owned Behringer also owned TC Electronics, who have been doing these kind of really quite cheap but look pretty good things. So like they've got the Bucket Brigade, they've got their version of a Rat, and I think those must share some sort of lineage with these as well, right? So I think it's a really interesting thing. The Klon is going to have like an enclosure that looks a little bit more like the original thing. I think if you're being cloned, it's got to be not the best feeling ever, right? So presumably Bill Finnegan could have at some point gone into business with someone else, and I think that was what happened with J Rocket, right? To try and mass produce this stuff, and it'd probably be better to be making some money, even if it was at the cheaper end like this, than not. But of course, Bill Finnegan's been getting cloned now for decades, so I don't know, be interested to hear how he actually feels about that sort of stuff, to be fair. Options at the cheaper end of the market. And Behringer, of course, do make some pretty good stuff as well, like the X-Air mixing desk. I've got one of those. Producing a mixing desk has got so many more parts and so much more going on than these effects pedals, which are kind of rudimentary, simple, you presume, in comparison to like a mixing desk which has 16 XLR combi inputs and has an app to work them all. I imagine, yeah, they're probably quite happy to be going into the pedal making market. And anyway, the prices are like pretty reasonable, like less than 70 quid for a Klon clone. These were 20 quid, so you're paying more, I guess, for an enclosure than anything else. Do you care if things are cloned or not? I think there's also this like demon effects which makes them proper like clones as well, which a couple of mates of mine have kind of bought. I don't know how you feel about that sort of stuff. Is this cloning thing something you care about anymore? Let me know your thoughts. And yeah, that's the TO800. It's like a 20 quid tube screamer and sounds actually really good. The plasticness is absolutely kind of fine as well. It's got a battery compartment. Particularly if you were using it in a switcher, this would be totally fine. And even if you're not, I think you'd probably get a couple of years out of this, at least, right? Yeah. I don't know, let me know your thoughts. Let's talk about Behringer some more in the comments. If you've got favourite Behringer pedals, let me know. Ones that you think deserve a bit of praise. Yeah, let folks know. Cheers for stopping by.